That's funny.
Well, good morning to our attendees. We were laughing about Kim's background, that she flew all the way to Washington to do a live report from the Capitol for us. So our attendees are coming out of their waiting room and filling in, and we'll just give that a little bit of time. But while we're waiting for that to happen, as you can see, we have Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland with us this morning. So we're super excited and honored to have him here with us to talk about the Fair Housing Month proclamation that they did. So we'll let our attendees fill in, and then we'll throw it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for having me. Disappointed that we can't all be in the same room, and look forward to seeing y'all soon. Hopefully sooner than later. But as we always do, we do a proclamation for the anniversary of the adoption of the Fair Housing Act. I'm not going to read the whole proclamation, but I do want to just pick out a couple paragraphs. Whereas the 52nd anniversary of the enactment of the Fair Housing Act on April 11, 2020 marks a turning point in American history when a federal law promised fair housing to all, regardless of race, color, religion, gender, familial status, handicap, and national origin, and encouraged fair housing opportunities for all. Whereas the city of Memphis is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all. Now, therefore, I, Jim Strickland, Mayor of the great city of Memphis, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2020 to be Fair Housing Month, and encourage all our citizens to wholeheartedly recognize the importance of the Fair Housing Act throughout the year. So thanks for inviting me to be part of this. I know you're gonna have is this all day, or is this
just for the next hour?
Next hour, okay.
Yep.
Well, thanks for involving me. I really appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. We're honored to have you here again, and thank you for doing this. I know you have so much going on right now, and for you to join us for a few minutes really means a lot, and thank you for recognizing Fair Housing Month. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Also, I'd just like to thank you, Mayor. Oh, did he already pop out? I was going to thank him for making us essential, but I guess he already popped out.
Yeah. Great. Well, that was so awesome. I'm so glad he could join us, and thank you guys for honoring our special visitor this morning. So welcome. This is our 5th live stream webinar in our Connection Confidence Commitment series. I'm Katie Schatz, the CEO at MAAR, and I'm so thrilled to be with all of you. We have a great group today, so thank you for being on this webinar. Before I introduce you to our panelists, let me go over a couple of housekeeping things. So for better streaming, it really helps if you close any unnecessary windows or browser, other windows you might have up on your browser or Outlook or whatever. That will speed things up and reduce any buffering. We've also muted all of you to avoid any background noise. We can't see or hear you. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A function. It's located on the bottom left corner of your screen by clicking on the little Q&A double talk bubble icon. You can also access chat to talk with each other and the panelists by clicking on the little talk bubble icon when you hover over the bottom of your screen. So please use chat to talk to each other, and Q&A if you have a question, and we'll be addressing those live as we go. And now I'm going to share my screen for a moment. There we go. Okay, so as I said, this is the 5th webinar in our series that we had originally planned to go through May 14th and have now extended until the end of May. So we're setting up another webinar for the 21st and the 28th of May. So more information to come on that. But next week will be our mental health power hour. Let's get Zen. And who doesn't need more Zen right now, right? So that will be a lot of fun next week. But today, we're honored to have an amazing panel to talk about fair housing and community engagement. It is Fair Housing Month, and it's more important than ever right now that we keep that focus on fair housing. So our panelists today include Scott Bettis, who is the chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Jerry Curry with Financial Federal Bank and former City of Memphis City Councilor, Kim Grant Brown, Governmental Affairs Committee Chair, and Home Builder Powerhouse, former President of the Home Builders Association, John Paul Schaefer with Building Memphis. He is their Executive Director and does a ton of great work in our community, and Rodney Tate, who's our Fair and Affordable Housing Committee Chair. We want to thank our sponsors for all of their support. We cannot do what we do without them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Bancorp South, Choice Home Warranty, Byrne and Associates, Stiles Law Firm. We so appreciate you. And you guys just saw our honored guest this morning, Mayor Jim Strickland with the City of Memphis. And here's a picture of the proclamation which he read part of. Usually we go to the city council meeting and we get presented this great proclamation in person, but this year it was mailed to Ken Scroggs' house and he took a picture of it with his phone, and this is the picture of it. So that's what it looks like. And we also got one from the Shelby County commissioners as well. So unfortunately, Lee Harris was not able to be with us this morning. He's just as busy as Mayor Strickland trying to get everything opened back up and put their plan together for that. So he wasn't able to be with us, but they also did a proclamation from the county to recognize Fair Housing Month. So we so appreciate that from all of the commissioners and the mayors. So thank them for that. So Rodney will be talking about this a little later, but June is Homeownership Month. April is Fair Housing Month. And we have some great events happening in June that will be kind of celebrating Fair Housing Month in June this year. Since we aren't able to be together in person, we'll be doing some events in June to recognize that. But I will let Rodney talk about that a little bit later, but put this in the back of your mind that we'll have a THDA Great Mortgage Class, Fair and Affordable Housing Forum, which was meant to be in April, will now be in June. And then Realizing the American Dream, brought to you by United Housing. So I will stop sharing my screen and come back to our wonderful panelists. And let's kick this thing off. So I think I'll just start by asking each of you to talk a little bit about your area of expertise and kind of what's going on and how fair housing affects what you do in your wheelhouse. So Rodney, why don't you talk about, since we just saw that slide about June, what can you share with us about Fair Housing Month?
Sure. So as we all know, Fair Housing Month is a time where we reflect and think about our current situation and what are we doing for fair housing. Are we in our business acting appropriately? Are we staying away from the no-no words, things like that? Just because we usually come together, putting together a huge forum or something to commemorate or celebrate Fair Housing Month, and it's been very difficult during this time to have any kind of public gathering. So MAAR has come up with an initiative to have fair housing at home, right? How do we practice fair housing at home? They've come up with a curated list of specific books, film and video, podcasts, journal articles, the works that you can find on MAAR. And I'm going to drop some links to them so you guys can see them. But just to give you guys a couple of examples of what they have suggested for us for this month to kind of read through. As far as books are concerned, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, American Apartheid by Douglas Massey, and Race for Profit is one that I've already ordered by Keegan Yatama Taylor. And it's about how banks and the real estate industry undermine Black home ownership. Film and video, they have one that's on YouTube called Adam Ruins Everything. He's actually on True TV if you guys watch True TV at all. But on YouTube, you can watch some of his videos, and he has one called The Disturbing History of the Suburbs. Definitely, it's a 6-minute video. I recommend everybody watch that one. It is very, very informative, and it's short, sweet, to the point, so anybody can understand it. And as far as film and video, movies are a big thing for me. I really enjoy movies. And they have one called The Banker that just came out with Samuel L. Jackson and Anthony Mackie. They're two African-American entrepreneurs who, Mr. Bernard Garrett and Joe Morris are the two people they are portraying. They're two African-Americans out of, one was born in the South, but he moved to Los Angeles to try to get into real estate. And obviously he was met with some hurdles and because this was in 1960, 1950. And he ended up purchasing 177 buildings, including what was considered the largest building or the tallest building in LA, downtown LA in 1961, which was the Bankers Building. And why that's important is because he could not get a loan from these bankers in this building. So he decided to buy the building. So I think that's an amazing, amazing story. So definitely take the time and watch those. And I am going to go ahead and drop the links to all of those so you can see what NAAR has suggested for the month right now.
Awesome book report. Thank you, Rodney. Gold star and A+ on that. So you're putting those in chat. So everybody, if you don't have your chat window open, be sure to open that up and maybe copy and paste those links into your browser so you can go check those out after the webinar, but before the links disappear anyway. Great, thank you for that. That was awesome. So Kim, you're there reporting live from DC, but we had some action here in Memphis yesterday with our county commissioners. So what's going on with that, and what's going on with governmental affairs stuff right now?
Well, as you can imagine right now, the municipalities, the cities, the state are taking a hit on their budgets. Without any business going on, the small businesses are being impacted, but so is our government. So I actually spoke with Representative Mark White last week, and before they got out of session earlier this year, they went ahead and cut $1 billion of what they predicted to have revenue out of their budget, cut expenses. So they're cutting on the local level. Yesterday, there was a very long county commission meeting where they were discussing the wheel tax. Actually, worried that property taxes were going to get brought up. So there was rumors that they were going to hike up property taxes to account for the downfall, but fortunately that did not happen. And so now the big discussion is whether or not they're going to do a wheel tax. I think it's something around $18 is what they're talking about. But anyway, so our push was we just don't want it to be all the burden on real estate. Just as far as what's been going on with government affairs overall, we had a really busy start to the year. NAR, TR, and MAAR were rolling along and then came to a screeching halt mid-March. So the state legislature shut down until June 1st, which is when they're going to open back up for business. And they're going to have a really short mini session because it's an election year and people want to be able to politic and get elected again. So it won't last very long. But as we saw other states starting to shut down small businesses, your association jumped into action and started making phone calls and sending letters to our politicians because we needed to make sure that real estate is listed as an essential business and that we could stay open. So letters were sent to the governor and then to all of our local mayors. And fortunately, on March 23rd, we did get a confirmation letter from Mayor Strickland's office confirming that we are listed as an essential and we can still continue to do business. So that was a huge win for realtors as a whole. There are several states where realtors cannot work right now. And, as we help people find a place to shelter in place, we are essential, and we did get that confirmation. But one of the big reasons we did is because of the relationships that we've developed through our government affairs and through MAAR in general. So our PAC is a big reason that we're so successful. Year to date, we have raised $80,000 in our PAC funds. We're hoping to continue to see that coming in throughout all this. Our goal, I think, is $136,000 for the year. And just because we're having to work differently, that doesn't mean that we're not still needing the funds to help our people get into office this fall. And so over the next several months, we are planning on doing Zoom interviews if things haven't opened up by then for all the candidates. So hopefully we are able to support pro-real estate candidates that will continue to help us stay in business. It's all the money that we've raised. This is the reason why it helps us get people in office that realize how valuable real estate is for our economy. So real quick, for our topic of the hour, which is fair housing. Last year, or as you know, the Realtors Code of Ethics actually has 2 additional protected classes than the federal fair housing laws. So in 2019, the House looked at a bill on the federal level, and they actually passed a bill that did add additional protected classes. NAR did support this bill, but it was stalled in the Senate, and that's where it sits now. So right now it's kind of on a holding pattern, but that is a fair housing topic that did get brought up last year. And then one last thing, fair housing is something that the realtors do take very seriously. I think it's important for people to know that if they ever do feel discriminated against, or that they've had a business deal that just didn't seem quite right, you can actually bring it to the Professional Standards Committee at MAAR. And MAAR has taken up these cases in the past and has found instances of discrimination. So I'd just like for people to know that and keep that in mind.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I will echo what you said on a couple of points, that yes, if you see anything that's going on, if you see something, say something, please let us know, because it's important for all of us to maintain that level of not only professionalism, but ethics. That's what Realtors are all about, is our code of ethics. That's what sets us apart from a real estate agent. So please, please, please contact us if you see anything going on that does not follow the code of ethics. And then regarding RPAC, I think now more than ever, we have seen the importance of advocacy and RPAC. So I echo what you say. I just re-upped my RPAC contribution this week. So I hope that you guys will all consider, if you're not already an investor, please do that. It's more important than ever right now. There are lots of things that will be coming up federally, locally, and at the state level that we need to make sure we're still protecting homeownership rights, private property rights, and the way that you do business. So that's hugely important. Thank you. Or bigly, hugely, bigly, I don't know. So Scott, you're chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Speaking of the Code of Ethics, so how does the Code of Ethics weave into fair housing, and what's the correlation there?
Well, obviously we need to be following the fair housing laws, but we do have the 2 extra protected classes that are part of our code of ethics, which is sexual orientation and sexual identity, in addition to race, religion, national origin, those things. And we all just need to be mindful. We need to be inclusive. It does make us as an industry better. It makes our communities better when we're all working together to just live and thrive and encourage each other. Our committee is a pretty new committee, and our goal really is to make our membership aware of the increasingly diverse population and identify ways to serve that population. If it's important to you and your community, we want to help you promote it. We want to help you get involved. We want to get it out to our membership. It really is just an important
Absolutely.
thing.
Thank you. So what types of projects does your committee work on?
Well, we get involved in supporting the Fair Housing Month. Of course, that got delayed until June. We participate in community events as we become aware of them, and really just try to be a resource for our members and set example that everybody is included at MAAR.
And you guys have done some great events and some great initiatives. We added, you came up with a mission statement that we added to our website. We're talking about making sure there's something in the lobby so everyone knows that everyone is welcome at MAAR and everyone has a place there and there's a niche for everyone. But you've done some really great events that I've attended about diversity and inclusion. So thank you for the
Fair Housing Seminar. It was very well attended and very well responded to. We're going to try to do that again. Like everyone else, we kind of got caught by
surprised.
And we're, we're in the process, like a lot of you probably are, regrouping as well. But the biggest message I want to send to everybody is, we just need to be mindful that some people are handling this beautifully. Some people are struggling financially, emotionally. Some people are scared, and we just need to, proceed with kindness, I guess, and understanding. And that's the biggest message.
Absolutely, and give everyone the grace and space to handle it whatever is appropriate for them. And I think sometimes something I've learned from coming to these classes that you guys have put on and events is sometimes when we think about diversity and inclusion, we think of only maybe gender or ethnicity or race, but there are a lot of other things that you can't see. If someone maybe has a hard time hearing or is visually impaired, you might not be able to see that. Or mental illness or mental, depression or whatever is going on. Those are things that you might not be able to see. So those are really important, like you said, to pay attention to. And how do you think people who are maybe visually or hearing impaired are dealing with things right now? I mean, is life different for them than during this COVID situation than it was before?
I really don't know the answer to that question, but obviously we need to be mindful of whatever impairments are. And if you have a question, ask, what is the best way for me to communicate with you? How do you want this information? And a lot of these things are maybe obvious or common sense things, but we need to be mindful of them. Everybody has their own thing, and when in doubt, ask. And as long as you're respectful, I think people will be receptive to.
I think that's great advice. And one of our staff people was telling me the other day about people who may read lips. Like now that everyone's wearing masks, people who read lips aren't able to do that. So just something to give you something to think about, that these are things that wouldn't have even occurred to me. So definitely thank you for those reminders to really be mindful and to just ask, hey, what's the best way for us to communicate and work through this together? So thank you, I appreciate that. John Paul, so all of your good work in the community and with your CDCs, so how are things going now that you're operating virtually and you're not able to get together to have community events?
Oh, it's definitely interesting. We were pretty well set up to do the work remotely, at least internally. We went remote on March 13th. I just came back from the housing conference. And, one of the first things we did was start just reaching out directly to our member CDCs and finding out kind of what they were facing, what they were pivoting, and started to hear how they were working on everything from, food access, through either their existing programs or with partnerships in their neighborhoods, to looking ahead at rent and utility assistance and things like that. We're grateful to have the Community Foundation hosting a response fund, United Way working on something, but we've also got some CDCs who have started up response funds of their own that are neighborhood specific. But then, looking at housing counseling needs and starting to get ahead of what we expect is going to be essentially an avalanche of needs for rental counseling and financial counseling and foreclosure avoidance, to really get ahead of this and not have it turn into another 08 crisis in that sense. And then we're seeing, continuing work on projects that were underway. We've got members like the Heights and Klondike Smoky City CDCs who are doing public space activation and cleanup projects. You've probably seen some info about the Works multifamily project in Fraser. Steve Lockwood with the Fraser CDC sent us a few pictures of the new houses they've got going. And that's been impacted by the COVID somewhat, in terms of code inspections and things like that. I think Kim might be able to address that as well. But then, the hard part is the community engagement. We've got a lot of members who work with neighborhoods where there are a lot of older people, there's limited access to technology. And so, you know, it's just a matter of shifting to talking to folks one-on-one, doing what you can virtually. You know, we've shifted and done our members meeting and our book club online both this month, and are kind of evaluating what does our community outreach and civic engagement look like going forward under social distancing. We also know that some of these events that are getting canceled are having a financial impact on CDCs. Some of these were fundraising type events that are either being, you know, rescheduled or postponed indefinitely. Let me look back at my notes. I will say one thing, you know, we saw, this kind of relates back to the counseling piece. We saw a resource come out of the Fair Housing Council, the Tennessee Fair Housing Council. And if I can share my screen for just a moment. Oh, no, I can't do that. We put a resource together. It's just an FAQs. I'll share a link to it, or we can email it out to everybody. Just some FAQs from both. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Okay, we got it.
And we can email it. And someone was asking if we could email, a couple of people asked if we could email those links, and we will do that, you guys, and we can send a call sharing now too.
Yeah, and we can send this out too. I can't quite tell what it looks like on screen, but just some FAQs for both property owners, landlords, and tenants, just based on what's in both the CARES Act and the Tennessee Supreme Court's moratorium on eviction. And so just goes through kind of what types of properties are affected, how long it lasts, kind of some of the nuances of what this looks like in terms of non-payment of rent versus other causes for eviction. And then again, also had something for the tenant side, for the renter side. So I'm happy to share this. We adapted it this week, added some new dates and some local contact information. I pinged MAAR and the Tennessee Association here on the landlord side, and then pointing folks to Home 901. So we know United Housing has been doing foreclosure counseling and home buyer education and those kind of things for quite some time. They're a really strong partner for us in figuring out what the counseling need is going forward. We've made some requests to the city, and yeah, I can stop my sharing. Just in terms of what they're receiving, both through community development block grant money and the CARES Act, in focusing that on housing stability, making sure that, you know, counseling is a piece of that, as well as rent and mortgage assistance. We've been operating the Memphis Housing Counseling Network for a while and are looking to do some additional trainings. We're seeing, you know, we know that the HUD rule changes about counseling certification are coming up this August, pending, you know, barring some change in how they're thinking. And so getting as many people ready for certification as possible. I'll touch really quickly on a couple of projects that are being impacted by COVID, but are still ongoing. And so one, many of you may have heard of Convergence Memphis. This is a partnership between the Mortgage Bankers Association, THTA, Building Memphis has been brought on as the local backbone quarterback, so to speak. This was originally focused on African-American home ownership and increasing that. Under COVID, we've pivoted a bit and started focusing on how do we maintain home ownership while continuing to get folks home ownership ready, mortgage ready. And so they have spun up a resource page that has some Memphis specific resources, but also I would always continue to push everybody to go to home901.org. That's something that United Housing has spun up. We've been a partner on that. Has great information on a lot of housing resources. And then always the library's 211 system is also somewhere where we look. They get a lot of calls. We're kind of tracking what kind of calls they're getting during COVID. And then one final thing, and I'll be done. The Memphis Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was created by Mayor Strickland and the City Council last year. If you didn't get a chance to read about kind of the 8 projects that first round of funding supported, they allocated nearly $1 million. It's leveraging about another $1 million in other sources of funding for single-family home repair and rehab. Several of our members were among that first group, and I encourage everybody to read up on that. We are currently working on a white paper that we're going to take to some private funders. Potentially, you know, this is how do you go to government and ask for money for a new program in the time of budget shortfalls? But we know that there are some other private funders, philanthropy out there that would be probably willing to support this. I think it's going to be a great need as we recover from COVID, to make sure that, one, we're not losing affordable housing, quality affordable housing, to kind of the anonymous investors out of state and things like that. But, you know, one thing we're using in this is our partnership with MAAR last year, in which we did some polling to find that voters in Shelby County really are supportive of resources for affordable housing. So we're excited to share that soon. I'll throw some links up here, and we'll get that document shared with everybody as well.
Thank you. That's an incredible resource. We appreciate that. Kim, I'm going to jump back to you for 1 second before I go to Jerry, and we have a great question to kick Jerry off when we get to you. But Kim, Brenda was asking about the legislation that you talked about, the federal legislation with the protected classes that MAAR we lobbied for in DC last May. Mm-hmm. Can you give more information about what protected classes we were talking about adding?
I'm pretty sure it was just sexual orientation. Oh no, sexual orientation and gender identity are the two. I think those were the only two that were included in that bill. And actually, if Ken, I know he's on, if he wants to message if there's any additional ones, but those are the only two that I know of.
Those are the two that I could think of too. But yeah, Ken,
yeah, and,
I know
we currently have them in our code of ethics. So we're already above and beyond. And this was just getting the federal fair housing laws up to that. But okay, Ken said yes, that's correct.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. So Jerry, let me scroll back up to this question. And John Paul actually kind of touched on this a little bit, but the question is, COVID is disproportionately affecting African Americans in Memphis and across the country. And I will definitely say that's true. We get a report via the chamber every single day with a report from Shelby County Health Department. And it's about, I think it's maybe 70-30 that African Americans are getting COVID, or 70% of cases, and then the rest is other people. So it is. And how can we, in the real estate industry, ensure we do not repeat a further dip in Black homeownership rates during our current crisis? There's a lot of information out there around forbearance. Credit is tightening. Ensuring homeownership is preserved in vulnerable neighborhoods still recovering from the foreclosure crisis is critical. So can you talk about that, Jerry? There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
It is. I will start by saying that COVID is not impacting African American neighborhoods. COVID is continuing to impact African American neighborhoods. It's not like it just fell out of the sky and started up again. It's just a continuation of an issue that has always plagued African American communities. In saying that, it needs to also be shared and stated that COVID, in my estimation, actually just created a perfect storm for not only financial institutions, but anybody involved in the work of fair and affordable housing to pivot and relook at some of the initiatives and strategies that are in place and figure out more creative ways to get information out to the general community. In addition to saying that, it's from a financial standpoint, it will further diminish the opportunity, and I hate to say it, but it's a reality, that it is going to be harder for African Americans, and not only African Americans, but low to moderate income, anyone impacted in fair and affordable housing and diversity, to move forward in purchasing homes. At this point in most lives in this community, which are driven by distribution, land, sea, air, and rail, and the people that are in those jobs, they are more concerned about sustainment as opposed to actually moving right now. Banks are also looking at, and yes, there will probably be a tightening of lending requirements because obviously none of the financial institutions want to have a repeat of 2010. So I received a question on yesterday. Someone wanted to know if they were able to possibly purchase an investment property. Maybe, maybe not. That is one of the areas that banks will be looking at a little more closer. It has especially impacted Airbnbs, which are typically investment property driven. And so you have a lot of consumers that have those properties that depended on that income that are now possibly not able to rent them at the degree that they were. So you're going to have properties out there. And obviously at any point when it comes down to who gets paid first, home is paid first. I just think that there are so many opportunities moving forward for financial institutions to continue partnering with MAAR, build United Housing, and create strategies that meet people where they are. And speaking with someone on yesterday, I know that one of the challenges everybody is having is how do we get news and information? And one of the responses that I received that I thought was absolutely brilliant is partnering with some of the mobile pantry organizations. People are going to come to those mobile pantry locations to get the food. It has to be something simple that they can take home, that all you have to do is stuff it in a box, put it in a bag, so at least they have something when they get home they can read to get additional information. It's, as you said, or I believe JP said it earlier, when you're dealing with a portion of the community, especially the elderly that don't have access to technology, you have to get creative in how you get to them and speak with them and work with them and help them.
Absolutely. And that's a great point about the technology. I think we talked about that yesterday. We had a test run for this webinar and talked about now that we are in this situation, everything we're doing, it depends on technology and having Wi-Fi and a laptop with a camera. Well, what if you don't have those things? So how does that affect something like credit counseling or financial counseling?
Fortunately, United Housing is still doing homebuyer education, and I'm sure Amy can email in on it or text in on it. They are still doing homebuyer education. There are still individuals that are buying houses, and I'm not trying to minimize what is being done, but from a financial standpoint, we are looking more at individuals that are either going to be in deferment or forbearance, and how we don't know yet how that will impact credit. We don't know yet how that will impact their mortgages, because it still impacts bottom line for financial institutions. But yeah, Amy did chime in. They are doing the homebuyer education for individuals that are still trying to get those credits so that they have down payment assistance available. And they are doing foreclosure counseling. Fraser CDC is doing foreclosure counseling via the telephone, as is United Housing. But there are not enough counselors, so I applaud what JP and Bill Memphis is doing to help create another layer to help move us past this so that everybody won't just fall into a ditch by the time this is over.
Definitely. And thank you, Amy. I'm so glad you're on the call, Amy with United Housing, or on the Zoom. And thank you for chiming in the chat. I really appreciate that. So Jerry, we talked to, and I'm looking at my notes from yesterday about forbearance versus deferment. And this is a great example of homebuyer education that some people don't understand what or forbearance means, and deferment. And you were talking about refis and how important it is to read the terms because the loans are being extended, right?
It actually hasn't just started. This has been going on for a while. Everybody has always grown up with the thought process that a mortgage is 360 months or 30 years. When you're looking at a loan that has been modified for 45 years, you know that there's something really, really wrong in what is being done at some level with some servicers and potentially some financial institutions. We're going to see a lot of that. And I think one of the places where not only the real estate industry can help, but Diversity, Build Memphis, United Housing, Fraser CDC is ensuring that before anybody signs a modification or forbearance, and not just say, okay, I'm going to sign it because they're lowering my payment, you need to look at the details. The devil will always be in the details, and that's where people get caught 3-5 years down the road when they're looking at either selling their home or something else as catastrophic has happened and they need to get out of a mortgage.
Absolutely, so important. And Rodney, I mean, speaking of devil being in the details and all the information that's coming at us these days, we're flooded with tons and tons of information. So as a realtor, how do you serve your clients when you have all this data coming at you? Are you trying to stay up to speed on all of it, or how do you handle that with your clients?
Yeah, so there is definitely a ton of data out there. It feels like a data dump, you know, and I think that the biggest part is one, making sure that the information that you are absorbing and especially transferring or giving to anybody else is credible. Make sure that that information is credible, and make sure that you always look at the sites of the sources of where you're getting your information. I think that's really, really big. As far as getting the information to my clients, obviously each situation is different depending on their needs. They may need different information, right? A past client may need information on avoiding foreclosure. A current client may need to know what the landscape of actually getting approved for a loan is now, right? So you want to know the sources that you want to use and that they are credible. And that's something else that I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, is something that I learned in real estate coming in very early, and it stuck with me, is to always be the source of the source and not the source, right? It's not only does that help bring value to your clients, but it also keeps you out of hot water. For instance, if you have clients that need that information, instead of just telling them what they should do, say, you know what, that's a great question. I've dealt with clients that had that same issue before. I'm going to send you a link or give you a phone number to somebody like Miss Jerry that you can talk to, and they can get you all the information that you need to make sure that you stay in your home, or make sure that you have the information to purchase that first home, even in the crisis that we're in. And that's the thing I think we need to be really mindful of, is that make sure that we are the source of the source and never the source, right? We know somebody who knows somebody, but I'm not that somebody, right? So I just want to make sure that we stay on. That's one great way to stay in line with the fair housing laws as well, is just to make sure that you're not giving out information that's false, and that keeps you protected as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's impossible for you guys to be experts in every facet of the transaction, right? That's why we have our awesome partners, and Jerry and our inspectors and appraisers and all of those people that help you guys do what you do. So thanks to them, and title and insurance. I'm leaving a lot out, but forgive me. Thank you for that. So Kim, can you talk a little bit about what's going on as a home builder, and how your business is going right now? This really doesn't quite exactly relate to fair housing, but I think it's really interesting to hear from you what's going on in your business. And maybe you talked yesterday about the supply chain, and I thought that was fascinating. So can you tell us about that?
Sorry, I muted myself. So it's been interesting. When all this started, we were waiting for sales to slow down or stop, and we really haven't had that, which is great. We are still selling. Our traffic is significantly down. We're down by about 70% as far as the people that are walking through our doors, but the amount of sales we're getting has not slowed down any. So what that tells me is the people that are looking need a house now, which is great. So every buyer out there is wanting a home tomorrow. It's not really just the tire kickers. So we are selling good. As far as what we're dealing with the virus is we're having a lot of shortages in supplies. So this morning, actually, we get something new just about every day that we can't get. And this morning, I just found out that our microwave plant has shut down. So we're not going to be able to get microwaves until June. Well, that's going to be a problem. People need a microwave. So
especially now, we're all cooking at home,
Everybody's stuck at home. And so that leaves us scrambling, looking for another source, another manufacturer that can provide us with a product. Just this week alone, we've had, can't get fireplaces. We can't get certain size doors, interior doors. And those are biggies. I mean, we need those to finish a house. So we're monitoring it daily. Our subcontractors and suppliers are keeping in very close touch with us. The other issue that we've kind of had come up is our workers in the houses. We're trying to limit the number of workers in the houses at one time. Whereas it used to be maybe the plumbers would be working at the same time. We're spacing them out so they're not on top of each other for their health and safety and our customers' health and safety. So that's been an adjustment, but we're working around that. We're trying to make people feel safe coming into our houses. And so as soon as anybody looks at a house, then my agents are going through and wiping it down. We're wearing gloves, the mask, the full thing. So we want people to feel safe as they're looking out looking at houses. But the next kind of big, I guess, if factor was code enforcement. We didn't know what was going to happen on that. Actually, whenever all this began, we went and pulled 23 permits in one day because we wanted to get them in before code enforcement shut their doors. Fortunately, they did shut their doors, but they're still providing inspections. As far as permits go, for the first 4 weeks or so, we would just drop them off in a drop box and they would get them and process them. But actually this week, Shelby County announced that they're doing all their permits online now, which is amazing because actually code enforcement, all the inspections and permitting and everything really slows down new construction and renovations for that matter. The time it takes to pull a permit, the time that we have to wait for the inspectors to get out, if there's a reinspection. And what's been kind of great is they've actually streamlined a lot of it just in the last several days to where we're able to pull permits online now in several municipalities, not all of them, but several. And then if we have an inspection, say a framing inspection, and it's turned down for something, they're allowing us to take a picture of the fix. So if we just had something that needed to be nailed, we can take a picture of the strap that got nailed down, send it to them, and they're approving it versus us having to wait for an inspector to come out 1 or 2 or 3 days later. So on that front, I'm hoping that we get a lot of efficiencies out of this. Stuff that they had planned on doing, but it was dragging out, and they were saying it might be next year, and now all of a sudden 4 weeks later we have it. So we're as far as inspections there, though, they stopped doing inspections on owner-occupied homes for a little bit, but now they're doing video inspections, and so I haven't heard anybody having any issues with that. So it seems like everything's kind of rolling along, and like I say, we're having hiccups, but we're figuring out how to work around them. So.
That is a perfect segue to talk about kind of how you guys are coping and just what's something that you think is going to continue after this that we've changed. I want to give, before we get into that, one thing, shout out to NARABs. Sherry Scott Chambers posted that they are also doing homebuyer education classes via Zoom. So thank you to them for that. And Amy, there was a question also from Nancy Walls for you about how to access your Zoom homebuyers class. And Sherry, if you'll put that for NARAB too, we can post that and send that to everyone as well. So let's go round robin. Tell me how you guys kind of on a personal level are coping and doing with this. And then also what's something that you think will continue and be a long-lasting effect of all of this? Kim, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Well, I feel like my world hasn't changed as terribly much as I think a lot of people's has, because I am still able to come into work, and you know, we're still building houses. I'm still out in the field walking houses, and so my world has definitely changed. I think the biggest adjustment is how nervous people are, and that's almost hard to get used to. People are, you don't really, you're trying not to offend people whenever you meet with them, and you're trying to keep the right distance. And I mean, going to the grocery store, you know, everybody's just kind of like head down walking through. So I think that's been the biggest adjustment for me. But I do think that there are a lot of efficiencies that are going to come out of this, just as far as like our code enforcements, which I already spoke about. And you know, the Zoom meetings, everybody's gotten so good at them now. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. So
definitely. John Paul, sorry. What about you?
But yeah, I mean, I think it's too soon to say, well, you know, so Building Memphis was about to look for new office space, for example. And now we're like, well, do we really need more space, or can we just kind of do this work the way we've been doing it? That's kind of a longer conversation. Personally, I mean, it's been challenging to have, you know, kids at home, everybody at home, and that kind of a thing, and they're struggling to learn online, just as we're all struggling with Zoom burnout and things like that. Taking a lot of walks, getting some stuff done around the house. We had you know, we're kind of in that camp of like, we've been planning to do X for a year and just have never really pulled the trigger on it. So one thing, our capacity building program director, Donna Olds-White, has been wanting to have these like soulful conversations, really just unstructured space for folks talking. And so we had one of those yesterday afternoon, and the whole getting out and taking walks thing came up. And I feel like several of us were like, you know, I've talked to more people in my neighborhood than I have in the past, you know, we've lived here for 9 years. Sure, we talk to our neighbors, but just out for a walk, pausing and talking to people. And I think, you know, I hope that that's going to be something that's true for our CDCs, that they're getting a better and closer connection with the folks that they're serving in their neighborhoods, but also for all of us as well, just that we'll be able to connect more with the folks we live around, and kind of keep that going forward.
Definitely. I feel the same way. And back to what you were saying about, well, going for walks, I feel like there's two camps. There's people who are losing weight and people who are gaining weight. And I'm in the gaining weight camp. I'm not going for enough walks and I'm eating way too much food. But I'm glad you're getting your physical activity. Scott, what about you?
I don't know that it's sufficient to counteract the amount of bread we're baking.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're in the bread baking camp. Okay, gotcha. And John Paul had to mute his thing earlier because his kids were in the background having fun, and so he's also in the camp of being a parent and a school teacher, and I know Kim's in that camp too, and also trying to work from home, which is just such a challenge. So I credit you for pulling it all off. Scott, how are things for you? Oh, let me unmute you. There you
go. Eating way too much, trying to counteract it with exercise, but and I've always been an agent that I go to the office every day. I just feel like it's more productive for me, and I realizing that I can work from home. I had 2 closings last month that did not get interrupted, so that was good. I have not shown anybody a house in person yet, but I have done a few virtual showings, and I've got some people trying to make a decision about listing that we were definitely listing, and you know, and they view me as the expert, like all of you, and I don't really know what the answer is. Is it the time or not? And I'm thinking yes, but you know, it's a really important decision for them. This is their primary house, and you know, we're trying to navigate through that, because the truth is I don't think really anybody knows. I know that, you know, some of the economists say, yes, it's, you know, the sales prices aren't going down or not going to go down, but I just don't know. And we're kind of taking a wait and see approach, which, you know, we've got to make a decision soon. You know, and I know that isn't really resolution, but that's something that I'm struggling with as an agent right now. How to properly advise people in a time when it's not necessarily crystal clear.
Definitely. That's a great point. And I will take this opportunity to plug the NAR mid-year meetings, which are completely virtual this year instead of being in DC. And that is May, I think 11 through 16. We'll send that out in an email as well. But you mentioning that, the reason I'm mentioning this is because Lawrence Yun is the chief economist for NAR, and he's incredible. If you've ever heard him, he's really great, and he will be doing a session during the virtual legislative meetings on the status of the economy overall and for real estate for sure. So that might give you a little bit of a compass too.
Well, I've actually used his economic outlook, I guess, as a link to send people when we're, as sort of a talking point. And, my interpretation of that is that housing is not suffering in value, at least at sales.
Definitely. NAR also put out, and we can send this to you in an email too, kind of a pulse report, and it was based on a bunch of members who they surveyed, and it's kind of about consumer confidence and realtors transactional load right now and everything. So we'll send that out to you guys too, and that might help you have a little bit more of your finger on the pulse of what's going on.
And as far as what I hope continues, I think people have been offering more grace to other people, and I hope that at the very least continues. I'm loving these Zoom meetings and classes. I hope those can continue as well. But just without any of the fear that some people are experiencing right now.
Definitely. Rodney, what about you?
Yeah, so I think my biggest adjustment has been, I've always been a sponge for like any information that I could get, especially real estate related. And right now is an opportune time for me, especially with NAR offering 3 designation certification classes absolutely free. I've already finished my PSA. I'm working on ePro. There's an investor certification that I'll be working on after I finish ePro. There's just a ton of information out there. And so I've been trying to take advantage of that because those classes are not cheap. If anybody who knows and does take a lot of those classes, $200 a pop for any of those designations. And right now they're absolutely free. It's take advantage. I think that's the biggest thing I want to say there. As far as what I hope continues, there are a couple things. Obviously, I've really liked the adjustment to Zoom. I used Zoom before we came into this, but never on this scale. And it is so efficient to be able to take back-to-back buyer consultations, back-to-back listing appointments. You can get right off of one, jump right on the next one, not have to pick up your things and drive across town and things like that. I think that's been very efficient for me and something that I hope does continue. I do still hope to be able to see people in person, but for now, I think this is a great way to kind of implement into your business and to try to help yourself save some time. And then lastly, I think there's something that may change. Our industry is based on labor force a lot. I think that with what we've seen, especially today coming out, the report of 30 million people filed for unemployment and millions more that haven't even had a chance to do that just yet. I think that's something employers are going to start seeing also, is that when they downsize, they're going to realize that some of these employees that they really didn't need, and they may stay permanently downsized. I think that's something that may affect our industry. It's definitely affecting the lives of a lot of people, but that's something that I'm definitely keeping my eye on moving forward.
Thank you. And yeah, we talked about this in our Leadership MAAR session yesterday, but a lot of us, because we are doing the virtual meetings and Zooms back to back to back, a lot of people are busier than they were when they were in the office. And I've definitely experienced that, and our staff has. You guys are shaking your heads, yes. And I do think it's because there isn't that time, that, transition time between meetings or drive time or whatever. You can be on 8 Zooms back to back to back to back, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? So very interesting byproduct of all this too, that we're actually busier because we're able to compress more in because we're being more efficient. So interesting. Jerry, what about you?
Well, Katie, let me say this to Kate. We have plagiarized in part on the strategic plan that MAAR implemented this year. So actually, this was going to be the Memphis area CRA breakout year in retooling our strategic plan.
Awesome.
So thank you all for.
I'm honored. Thank you for that.
Yeah, looked at it and thought, oh, okay, we can implement some of this. So
yeah, but it's fast tracking it, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah, for us too.
Yeah, so the CRA Association, at the end of the day, it's a compilation of about 18 banks right now. The big three, FDIC, OCC, and Federal Reserve, were looking at changes in the way CRA would be implemented and instituted within the banking system. So we don't know how that is going to impact us over the long haul, but in preparation for it, our assumption will continue to be that we're going to work as we have worked previously on addressing fair and affordable housing, diversity, low to moderate income individuals for rehab, renovation, purchase, refi. So that won't change in what we're doing. We just got to get a little bit more creative because we're not having meetings also other than Zoom. So we have a Zoom account now also.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm working more from home than I am from the office, but I'm like Scott, every now and again, I've just got to go in there and see something that looks sane. You can only look sane at home so many ways, and then you kind of go stir crazy. And Kim, I can understand your concern about not having a microwave. We have a double oven. My husband and